Now before I export this out, export the UV map out, I'd like to try and get a sense of what is what. What parts of this UV map coincide to which parts of the 3D model. So say if I choose this face right here, I can see that there is that face on the UV map. So let me select everything over here in the 3D view. And then as I begin selecting things over here, I can't really see it yet in the 3D view, but if I come down here to this little guy right here, this Keep UV and Edit Mode Selection in Sync, I can turn that on. Now if I select, say, this face here, we can see which one it is here. So I'm going to press the L key over this, and instead of selecting by seam, I'll select by normal, I guess. So that'll select everything. And I'll hover over these and press the L key as well, just so we can get a sense of where they are. Now they're kind of mixed in there, and it'd be nice if I could access them kind of as one unit. And there are a couple of ways to do this. Now I could spend some time here and rearrange the UV map manually to try and get these things together so that when I take them into Photoshop, I can kind of deal with them all at once. Or what I could also do is export the UV map out in parts. So I could export the UV map out with only these pieces, and then I could export the UV map out with all the other pieces, and then overlay them on top of each other in Photoshop. That way I could turn the layer off for one and on for the other. So let me show you what I mean here. If I come back down here and turn this back off, now I've only got these here, right? I've only got these UV islands coinciding with just the kitchen counters. So I can export this out on its own. So let's say I go to UVs and export UV layout here. Go to my textures folder. I'll go ahead and create a new folder here, and we'll call this, I'll just call it kitchen. I'll put everything in there, all the textures for the kitchen in there. I'll take this to 2048 because I want it to be a little bit bigger, and I'll call this countertops UVs, like that. So I'll go ahead and export this out. Now what I can do is just invert the selection. So I can come down here to select and inverse, or Control I, and now I've inverted the selection for everything else. One thing about it is this little guy, that handle, once we texture this, just that one UV, we're going to duplicate it all the way around. But I think it could be a little bit bigger here. Let me zoom in and select this as an island. I'm going to choose UV island selection, and I'll click that, and I just think I'll move it down into here and scale it up just a little bit. So now that I've got all of this here, I can export this out as well. Export UV layout, put it in that kitchen folder, and for this, let's call this cabinets. There we go. Oh, and I need to make sure these are the same size, 2048, and export these out as well. All right, so now let's go take a look at them in Photoshop. Here in Photoshop, I'll open them up. I'll go to that kitchen folder, select both of them, and let's open those up. So now you can see I've got one UV map for the countertops and one for the cabinets. What let's do is let's go ahead and select everything here with Control or Command A, and we'll copy it. And then we can come over here, and if I just paste it in, it's going to be in the wrong place. What I need to do is come over here to Edit, Paste Special, and use this Paste in Place, or Shift Command V. Click that, and that inserts the UVs into the proper place on the UV map. So if I turn this off and on, hopefully you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit. It's kind of hard to see. So you can see here how they've been placed in the proper spot on the UV map. So now I can work with each individual one. I can work with just the wood and the handle, or I can work with just the countertops. So what let's do is let's go ahead and work with the wood for now. Most of these are going up and down. I see the grain should be going up and down, but up here you can see the grain is going horizontally. These are the kitchen cabinets here. But let's see what we can do. I'm going to open up a new texture. I'm going to go to my textures folder on my drive, and I think I have a wood grain that I kind of like. Let me see. I think it's this one here. Yeah, I think I'd like to use this one for the kitchen cabinets. So I will open that up, select it all, copy it, and let's bring it into this document here. I will paste it, drag it down beneath the UVs. I better call these the cabinet UVs so I know which one it is. And these, I'll call these the counter UVs. All right, so this is a little bit big, obviously. We're going to need to shrink this down quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it 90 degrees and shrink it down some. And let me see if I can place it right down here. See how this looks. I'm wondering if this is going to be small enough for the counters. I think it will be. Let's go ahead and use this like this. I'll press Shift and Alt and click and drag, and let's start duplicating this around the UV map here. Alright, I've gone through the same process that we've gone through before, just copying and arranging the wood grain over the UV map as best as I can. But I'm going to need to take this back into Blender just to see if I've got the wood grain in the right direction for all of the UV islands. So I'm going to turn off the UVs for the cabinets here. And I'm not going to clean it up quite yet. I just want to see how I did here. And before I export it, I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to save it as a PSD here, and I'll just call it cabinets. I'll just call it cabinets here, PSD. And now I'm going to export it. File, export, export as. And I'll export this as a PNG. And I'll put it in that kitchen folder as well. So I'll call this cabinets _C for color map. And let's see how we did. Over here in Blender, I'll go ahead and create a new material for the cabinets. Here in the material panel, I'll just click new. And let's call this cabinets. Here in the node editor, I will go ahead and bring in an image node. I can go to add texture, image texture, and I'll go ahead and bring in that texture map that we created. Here it is. And I'll switch to texture viewport shading. Now let's tab back into object mode and let's take a look at this. Yeah, we're going to have issues with the counter, and that's okay. I'm not worried about that right now. I just want to make sure that everything is looking okay. And to me, this part doesn't look very good. I feel like these up here aren't looking very good. So I've got several areas in which either the wood grain is going the wrong way or it just isn't looking very good. So one of those is this right up here. So let me go to face mode, select that, and I can see that that's that area there. It looks like that needs to be turned, as well as this one up here. That doesn't look too bad, but this one up here is turned in the wrong direction. So I just need to go through and figure out on the UV map which ones are turned in the wrong direction. This is turned in the wrong direction here, but I don't really care because the stove is going to be there. So that's fine by me. So what I'll do is I'll go through and work on that and just try and edit those to turn the textures for these individual UV islands in the proper direction. Well, I've gone back to Photoshop and turned some of these wood grain textures to match the model a little better. So let me bring that back in and let's see how it looks. Alright, so that looks a little better. We've got wood grain going up and down here. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go with that for now. And now let's take a look at working on those countertops. In Photoshop here, I'll go ahead and clean this up. So if I select the UVs here and come over here to my magic wand tool and select outside of the UVs. I'm going to have to shift click in a couple of areas down here to get these as well. Looks like I have all of them now, I think. I'm going to go to select and modify and contract that selection by 2 pixels. And then I'll take all of this wood grain Photoshop layers and combine them all together with Control or Command E. And now I'll just hit delete and clean that up. Now I can come over here to these UV islands and I'll work on these in the same way. So let me hide these here, and now we've got our countertops. I just need to find a good texture for the countertops and lay these in the proper places. You know what? Why don't I use that texture we used earlier? Let's see if I can find that. I think back in here in the textures folder, here, isn't that what we used on the coffee table? And wouldn't that be, I think that would work out okay. Let's give that a try. I'll open it up and bring it in, and let's check it out. Yeah, I think this would probably work all right. I do plan to put a bit of grunge over it, so I think it'll work out. All right, I've put that texture over those UV islands. I can grab that cabinet layer, that cabinet texture, and drag that up above here, turn it back on, and turn off the UVs, and now the countertop is just showing through the empty places where the wood is. So let's go ahead and export this and give it a try. All right, here in Blender, I'll just get rid of that and reload that, bring that cabinets_C back in, and let's take a look. Yeah, I think that'll work. Now, I'm going to want a lot more grunge, but I think that's going to work just fine. So let's go clean that color map up before I add some grunge. I'll just go back to Photoshop. I've already cleaned this up. Let's take all of this, all of these countertop layers, and combine them down to one. I'll call this counter, and I'll call these cabinets. I'll select the counters UV layer, and with the magic wand tool, I'll go ahead and select around all of those. Let me turn off the wood here just to make sure I have all of these selected. Yep, looks like that's good. I'll expand the selection, or excuse me, contract the selection by 2 pixels. Go over to the counter layer, delete, and there we go. So now we've got that. Let's now create a new layer, put it behind all of this, make it black. Go to our paint bucket tool and let's put black behind there. All right. Now I think all we need to do is just work on bringing in some grunge, just some dirt and nastiness. We'll work on that in the next video.